as Russia just continues its drone attacks. Russia has not stopped the Ukrainian bombardment despite peace efforts spearheaded by President Trump.
Of projectiles fired from the other's territory into the other's territory. And you rightly said that in the most recent one, it was 126 Ukrainian drones.
The war in Ukraine has seen shocking twists and turns. But nothing prepared the world for the night when Russia launched its most ambitious drone strike yet. 574 drones sent soaring into Ukrainian skies in a single coordinated wave.
According to these reports coming in this morning, Russia launched more than 570 drones and 40 missiles overnight while you were sleeping.
It was supposed to be the strike that broke Ukraine's defenses, the overwhelming swarm designed to overwhelm air defenses, burn out resources, and finally tilt momentum back in Russia's favor. Instead, it turned into one of the most disastrous backfires in modern warfare. Because just hours after the onslaught began, Russia itself was left reeling, staring at ruins of its own making.
More sort of rarely, the Russian drone attack was actually lesser numerically overnight than the Ukrainian drone attack.
The drone wave started just before midnight, filling radar screens across Ukraine with so many signals that air defense operators thought their systems were malfunctioning. Sirens wailed in Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, and dozens of smaller cities as the swarm advanced. People rushed into shelters, cell phones buzzing with alerts as the nation braced for impact. The Kremlin, according to Russian state media, called it a decisive strike, the kind that would remind Ukraine and its allies of Russia's unmatched scale. But scale doesn't always equal success. Ukraine has learned the hard way how to adapt to drone warfare. Over 2 years of conflict, it has built one of the most advanced, layered air defense systems in the world. Part Western technology, part homemade innovation, and part sheer ingenuity.
As Russia just continues its drone attacks. Russia has not stopped the Ukrainian bombardment despite peace efforts spearheaded by President Trump.
That night, everything Ukraine had been building was put to the test. Anti-aircraft guns opened fire, missile batteries locked in, and electronic warfare systems jammed incoming drones mid-flight. In city after city, Ukrainians looked up from their shelters to see streaks of light cutting across the sky as drones exploded before reaching their targets. The ground shook, windows rattled, but miraculously, much of the swarm was stopped. Still, some drones got through. Explosions rocked power substations, rail yards, and military storage sites.
Ukrainian defense forces were able to shoot down 46 of them. 9 others, though, were able to hit 4 separate locations.
Fires lit up the night, and for hours it looked like Russia's gamble had paid off. But then came Ukraine's counter. Within hours of the last Russian drone going down, Ukraine launched a retaliation of its own, one so swift and devastating it caught Moscow completely off guard. Using long-range drones, precision-guided missiles, and sabotage teams on the ground, Ukraine turned Russia's offensive into a catastrophic boomerang. Dozens of Ukrainian drones flew across the border into Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk, targeting fuel depots, weapons factories, and airfields. Reports began to filter in of explosions deep inside Russian territory, not just near the front, but hundreds of miles away. Videos surfaced online of massive fireballs rising from Russian oil refineries.
He has been blamed by Russia on a Ukrainian drone attack. It was one of a series of strikes on Russian military infrastructure this weekend.
Flames painting the night sky orange. The strikes didn't stop there. Ukraine had been holding back, saving stockpiles of Western-supplied missiles for a moment exactly like this. That moment had arrived. Hours after surviving Russia's largest drone swarm, Ukraine unleashed Storm Shadow and ATACMS missiles on Russian logistics hubs, command centers, and air bases. By sunrise, footage showed rows of destroyed helicopters at Russian airfields, warehouses reduced to rubble, and convoys of burning trucks left smoldering on highways. Russian state TV, usually quick to downplay losses, went silent for nearly 12 hours.
A way that the Russian security services and military have been stunned by and were absolutely not ready for.
When it returned, the images were impossible to ignore. Entire fuel storage sites near Belgorod had gone up in flames, threatening to choke supply lines feeding the Russian front. A weapons factory outside Bryansk was reduced to smoking ruins. At least 2 military airports suffered crippling damage. Russia's attempt to crush Ukraine with drones had ricocheted back as a hammer blow against its own infrastructure. The symbolism of the night was staggering. Russia had thrown 574 drones into Ukraine, one of the largest aerial attacks of the war.
Ukrainian Air Force says it's one of the biggest aerial attacks of the year, but they were able to shoot down the majority of those.
Yet instead of breaking Ukrainian resistance, it exposed its own vulnerability. Ukraine's survival wasn't just a defensive victory, it was proof that Moscow's strategy of overwhelming numbers could be met with innovation and resilience. And the counterstrikes reminded the Kremlin of something it has tried to ignore. The war it started doesn't stop at Ukraine's borders anymore. The human side of the night told its own story. In Kyiv, children were filmed singing in subway shelters, trying to block out the thundering sounds above. In Odessa, families huddled together, flinching at every distant boom, only to emerge hours later to cheer as they saw the wreckage of downed drones scattered across streets and fields.
Its victory in Ukraine is inevitable. This extraordinary operation shows that Ukraine is still in this fight.
Meanwhile, across the border, Russian civilians woke up to chaos they never expected. Videos from Belgorod showed panicked residents fleeing as oil tanks exploded one after another. In Bryansk, mothers ran through smoke-filled streets, clutching children as emergency sirens blared. For many Russians, the war they had only seen on TV was suddenly at their doorstep in the most terrifying way possible. Western officials, watching in real time through satellites and intelligence channels, couldn't hide their amazement. One NATO commander called it the most dramatic night of the war so far. The sheer scale of Russia's assault and Ukraine's counterattack left analysts stunned. Military experts pointed out that Ukraine had turned Russia's biggest strength, its willingness to expend vast numbers of drones, into its own weakness by forcing Moscow to burn through resources while leaving its own infrastructure exposed.
Overseas, Russia hit Ukraine with yet another massive drone attack. Another example of the critical role drones are playing in modern conflicts.
Of projectiles fired from the other's territory into the other's territory. And you rightly said that in the most recent one, it was 126 Ukrainian drones.
What came next was even more devastating for Russia: the propaganda collapse. For months, the Kremlin had been telling its people that Ukraine was weak, on the verge of breaking, incapable of striking back. That illusion shattered as Russians themselves filmed massive fires and shared them online. Overwhelming censors. The myth of invulnerability at home was gone. Russia's attempt to showcase strength had, in just hours, backfired into a spectacle of weakness. Ukraine's leaders wasted no time seizing the moment. President Zelensky gave a fiery address, praising the defenders who shot down the swarm and the strike teams who carried the fight back across the border. "You tried to bury us in darkness," he said, addressing Moscow, "but we lit up your night with truth." The speech spread worldwide, cementing Ukraine's reputation as a nation that refuses to break, no matter how overwhelming the odds. For Russia, the consequences were grim. Military planners had hoped the massive drone strike would wear down Ukrainian defenses and open the way for a new offensive. Instead, they lost critical fuel reserves, weapon stockpiles, and credibility all in one night.
What we're seeing here is an extraordinary assault that not only is it a demonstration of Ukraine's ability to innovate.
The cost of 574 drones, millions upon millions of dollars, now looked like a reckless gamble that bought them nothing but humiliation. By the next day, international headlines painted the picture clearly. Russia had tried to drown Ukraine in drones. Instead, it drowned in the consequences. The images of burning oil depots, shattered factories, and wrecked aircraft spread far beyond Europe.
Strike Russia where it's not expecting it. It's also a clear indication that Russia is not invincible.
Ukraine's Air Force says Moscow's forces fired a total of 55 long-range Iranian-made drones.
Countries still sitting on the fence about supporting Ukraine suddenly saw proof that Kyiv could not only defend itself, but strike deep inside Russia with precision. The night of 574 drones will be remembered not for the fear it caused in Ukraine.
Ukraine has long used long-range drones launched from Ukraine, which then fly into Russian airspace,
but for the ruins it left behind in Russia. It was supposed to be Moscow's show of force. Instead, It became Ukraine's greatest display of resilience, retaliation, and raw defiance.